Yesterday I realized something. I realized that there is no superficial topic or conversation. What I mean by that is no matter what topic you choose, it it isn't it could be superficial or it could be deep, and it all depends on how you follow up the conversation. So, yesterday I went out with my roommate to some sushi place and we ended up eating there for a while, probably like an hour at least. And during that time, we started talking because I was the new roommate. So they wanted to get to know me and I wanted to get to know them. That was the idea of the restaurant meet, of going to the restaurant in the first place, so that we could casually have a conversation and get to know each other. And as a mini celebration, too. So we ended up going over and right, we had small conversations, but every single conversation we had was small talk. It felt like small talk and it felt awkward too. So it it was the type of conversation that was like, so what did you do today? What sports do you do? What books do you read? And those are good questions. Those are good ways to start a conversation, but you can't continue a conversation just asking those questions. You have to dive into at least one of them, or else it's just going to be an interview. And even if it's not an interview, even what I mean by that is, even if you just repeatedly ask questions, that's going to get boring. That's going to get boring for both parties. Nobody's going to want to keep on answering the questions. It's just an interrogation. It doesn't feel good. But what I'm saying is also, if you don't make it exactly like an interview where they answer the question and then you reflect and you say, well, yeah, my favorite book is actually this, that is significantly better. But again, you can go a step further. And after you make that reflection, you continue on. You don't restart the conversation with another question. You already have the conversation flowing. And now you want to abruptly end it just to ask a stupid question. It's not a stupid question, but this really gets me riled up, if you will, because you have the momentum. You really didn't need to kill it. So I'll give you an example. Again, with the book example, you say, like, what's your favorite book? Oh, I haven't read it, but Pride and Prejudice. Oh, Pride and Prejudice. Yeah, I haven't heard about that one too frequently, but I know it's a classic. How is it? Oh, well, it's okay. I liked this one part where whatever. Oh, okay, that reminds me of this other book. And like you'll find it's very specific to the conversation, which is why that example didn't flow too correctly, too cleanly, because it's so situational on your experiences and and even your lack of experience with it. Because if you don't even know anything about Pride and Prejudice, you can keep on asking questions about that similar topic and gain an understanding and understand that individual better. Because like questions one of the things you're really trying to answer is, what is this who is this person like? What does this person like and dislike? Why did this person read this book? What interests um what interested this person to read this in the first place? all of that. That's substance to actually have in a conversation. I I think the reason I'm so not even it's I'm not angered. It's just frustrating because that's what our entire conversation was. And then at some point I broke out and I just said, "You know what? Like why do you keep on just asking me these questions? Because I want to get to know you." Yeah, I get that, but please like make it less awkward. I know, and like part of that is on me of not facilitating such a smooth conversation, but just let like let it be natural. Let it not be awkward. Is that so hard? Yeah, I I understand too. People are at different levels of socialization and comforts. I mean, there's people that are really introverted and really awkward with talking with new people, but once they know them well, you're able to have conversations really nicely, really cleanly. And that was my old roommate. I found we could have a conversation about anything, and it would be funny too. We wouldn't have talked for I don't know like a day, and then the next day we just see each other in the kitchen, for example, and then we'd ask like, "What do you think of salmonella? Do you think I'd get salmonella if I ate this chicken right now, raw?" Thing like random things like that, and those made for really interesting conversations. I mean, of course, like nobody asks you those questions, and it's really strange, but it's also really nice to answer, really fun to answer, and it's a really unique unique discussion. I think that's kind of the conversations that I crave. And I realize with so I started a podcast. I'll give a little bit of context. I I've published 2 episodes so far. I forgot that I need to publish another one. I already have it recorded. I just need to publish it, download it, and publish it because I did it off of a separate platform. Oh well. So out of those 2 conversations, one of them was more of an interview style, where I asked my friend all these questions, and the other was more of a relaxed, casual conversation. And I reviewed it. I reviewed mainly the second one, and I've learned a lot. One of the big things was learning that I laugh awkwardly when just when I feel awkward, when there's breaks in the conversation where there's nothing to say, I will laugh or I will smile and then break out into a mini laugh, which makes no sense. I mean, it makes sense in terms of like anxiety, but it makes no sense in terms of the content of the conversation. There's no reason to laugh other than you being anxious or nervous or trying to fill in the gap with something. So I want to try to work on that, not laugh when I don't need to. And I think the reason I want to work on that is because I I understand or I understand. I would say I'm a very cheerful person, I guess. So I'll be smiling a lot. And in fact, I asked my one of my friends what his first impression of me was. And he said dry fit, which is funny because I actually have dry fit right now. And smiley. And that made me feel nice. It's nice to be known as the smiley person, the positive person, the happy person. Going back to the point though, it's fine with being smiley. I don't I don't want to get rid of that, but I want to get rid of what makes me seem inauthentic. And a big part of that is, as I said, as I pointed out, laughing when there's breaks in conversation. And it's somewhat natural to do that. I mean, a lot of people do that, but it's obviously not authentic. It's not an authentic laugh. So work on that. I want to work on that. And there were a couple of other things. I'll see if I can think of something right now. Right. Just in the conversation, in the podcast setting, the conversations I have, I feel awkward just because I'm being recorded. This simple fact that I'm being recorded, it makes it that much more difficult to speak coherently and also speak in a casual manner because I'll talk with my friends immediately after I finish the podcast. I'll talk with my friends really cleanly and casually and be able to have a decent conversation. And I won't say interesting, but a, yeah, I guess a somewhat interesting conversation, a genuine conversation. But in the podcast, it feels like I have to deliver content and I'm being recorded. So every movement I make is going to be revised. It's going to be analyzed. I have to be precise. I have to be concise. I have to be articulate. I have to be perfect, you know. And I know I don't have to be I know I don't have to, but the mere thought that the mere thought that I have eyes on me, that I have a camera watching me, it adds a bit of pressure. Yeah, I want to improve at that for sure. Two goals, two small goals, I guess, already. Yeah, okay, what I also wanted to mention was I thought about it for a bit. I remember I had this conversation arc where I wanted to get much better at conversations. And I still do. But that was back when I would say pretty bad at making conversations with strangers or with people that I somewhat knew. And I realized that I have to find what interests the person that I'm talking to. And I was thinking, like, how would I get to that? Well, I'd have to get to know them. So generally, in the university setting, you'd ask what's their major. And then once you find their major, you realize this is what they're likely to be most passionate about. But that's not always the case, too, because a lot of engineers, a lot of math students, and a lot of even computer science students, which is those three would be the ones that I mainly interacted with. They that's their occupation, but that's not really their passion. Computer science actually is a bit different. I find people in computer science have to be really driven into computer science since it's so competitive. Only the ones that are so passionate about it manage to get in. But engineers, they're not really a lot of the engineers that I talked to weren't really super interested in engineering. It was just I can make money through this thing that I'm decently good at. I don't really see any other way to make money, so I'm gonna go through here. And it makes me a lot of money, so might as well. So you have to find another way. So what clubs do you go to? What do you do in your free time? I think that's actually a goaded, a an overpowered strategy. Asking what do you do in your free time? Because then I think what people do in their free time exposes them exposes you to what they are like. to what they enjoy, to their passions. Because what are you going to do in your free time? You're going to cook. That's mandatory. You're going to shower. That's mandatory. Maybe exercise is mandatory, but sometimes it's even passion driven. And everything else is basically free time. I mean, even cooking, people enjoy cooking too. I don't enjoy cooking. So I'm going to be biased and say like cooking is mandatory, right? But and so I'm not going to include that in my free time. I'm not going to say I do that in my free time. But people who enjoy cooking are going to say they do that in their free time. So by asking that question, you gain so much information on what their passions are. But then I realized if somebody asked me that, I wouldn't know how to answer. The first thing that comes to mind is Rocket League. But again, like recently, I don't want to play Rocket League anymore. I don't want to be addicted to this game, addicted to video games, and I want to focus on improving myself. So, Rocket League, I don't want to say that it's my passion anymore. Even though to some extent, I guess it'll always stay with me. I'll always have that nostalgia attributed with Rocket League. I don't, I want to, I want to leave it in the past, I guess. I hope to leave it in the past. I know I'll play it every now and then, but I, I, like, I just see it as an addiction that I really shouldn't, I shouldn't feed into. Okay, so now Rocket League. What else then? Well, I do listen to a lot of music, so I guess music. But really, like, it's hard for me to think of. So that's why this is funny. The computer science brain side of me made a note of yeah, of all my hobbies that I could mention in conversation. So it's a decently long list. So I'll just run through a few of them. Barefoot shoes, minimalism, read slash books. So reading and yeah, reading books, TV shows and movies, finance slash stocks slash crypto, working out, soccer, piano, Blender, the 3D modeling software, GIMP, the like the Photoshop shop, the free Photoshop alternatives, music, chess, Rocket League. I have again, clones, Colmac, so the keyboard layout, the Colmac keyboard layout, Debian, the Linux distribution, behavioral slash evolutionary psychology. That's basically why humans act the way we act. Yeah, that's what it is. The psychology behind that. Like how what led us to that thinking. So I'll give a basic example, like why, maybe not an example, but explain it more. Why do okay, no, this is an example. Why do we find symmetrical faces attractive? Or why do we find certain things attractive? You know, things like that that explain, that are able to, like, we ask those questions, we ask those things that we take for granted. Like, what does it mean to even be attractive? Things like that. And then we answer them with theories. Basically, they're theories for now because it's very hard to concretely answer any of them since you're going to have data. Sure, you can poll people, but in the end it's evolution. How are you going to ask somebody about evolution? You can't. You just have to go off of past data, history, and the best you can do is make theories. You can't make a concrete fact, I guess. I'm missing the word, but I think you should understand. I'll finish it off. Down the list is sleep. So in parentheses, routine and optimalism. So optimizing sleep and making it a routine. And religion and ring griffin roll. So this is funny. So this is the ring that I have. The griffin roll is basically like this. Boom. Look at that. So the reason I mentioned that is like that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. And if I mention ring griffin roll, like what ring griffin roll? What do you mean by ring griffin roll? Oh, well, I can do this trick with my ring. Oh, cool. And then you can have a conversation off of that, even though it's such a minuscule conversation to have. It doesn't make much sense to have a deep conversation about like a ring trick, but it's still an opener onto a more deep discussion. As I was mentioning earlier on. Yeah, I have a more yeah, I have a few more, but those are my bulk. Those are my go-to. And now the thing is